everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. How are you? How's the weather? Oh, yo, guys, I am loving spring. Amazing. So I hope you are too. So today we're going to talk about something superficial, but that requires a deep dive. A lot of women don't want to go into this conversation because things look good, things look superficially all right. When you're making good money, when your lifestyle feels comfortable, when nothing obviously looks wrong, you don't think you need to be having this conversation. You think this is a conversation someone else needs to have that is struggling with money. And when you don't think you're struggling with money, it's kind of like redundant, but it isn't. I promise you, this is essential. I am in the business of building women to be financially confident. And I call a financially confident woman is a woman who is grounded in how she is using her money and she taps in. She is so connected to herself. She knows what's for her and what isn't for her. And she always makes sure life happens for her. She's happening to life. So if there's a level of disconnect or lack of control at any given state or stage of your relationship to money, your personal life, your achievements in life, then this could be one of the reasons why this is happening. So we're going to talk about when things look good, you can afford it, but is that really the point? Let's look into it. Let's dive in. Now, when there is a kind of disconnect that shows up at a level where things look good, things are, your lifestyle is, it's good. There's no red alarm going on. It's like almost no one is naming it. No one talks about it. No one wants to point it out. But I'm going to do that. I'm going to do the exact thing no one is doing. And I may be what they call the bad cop, but you'll thank me later. Let's dive in. Okay. So we've been taught to think about financial avoidance coming from fear. So women that are afraid to look at the bank account because they're afraid of what they're going to see in there, or they're not looking at the numbers because it may not reflect what they want, or you think something is wrong financially and you don't want to face it. Maybe you don't think you're making enough money. Maybe you think you have debt that you can't pay off. Maybe you're worried about a collection. Everyone knows about this. So whenever we talk about money being hard and struggling, people struggling financially, this is what we're thinking about. And then when we think about women that are avoiding the money, this is what we're thinking about that they're avoiding. But no one talks about a successful woman who makes over six figures, who makes multiple six figures, who's still avoiding her money. Her reasons are not these reasons that I mentioned. They're not fear-based. They're based into something else. Because here at this level, avoidance doesn't feel like avoidance. It feels like freedom. It's like, think about it. She thinks, I can afford this. I don't need to stress about money. I've earned this. I work very hard for this. And honestly, all of that is true. I'm so proud of a woman who has worked so hard to get the promotions, to build the business, to make the money. That's incredible. But when you say that to yourself, when it's time to make some expenses, when it's time to spend money, and this is what's running, underneath all of that, there's something deeper. There's a lack of examination that I want to call you into. Because here, avoidance is masked for freedom. So you stopped asking yourself questions. And actually, you stopped asking yourself better questions. You stopped challenging your decisions. You stopped checking in with the way you were using your money, if it felt like what you wanted, if it was exactly what you like, what matters to you, with your money was buying and purchasing what mattered to you. So you're not avoiding your money because you're afraid. You're avoiding your money because you're comfortable. And I know on the podcast, I often talk about how there's no comfort level. But when it comes to money, because it's masking what's really underneath it all, it feels comfortable. Your lifestyle is like has changed, right? Your money has increased. And so as you increased your earning potential, you've also increased your spending capabilities. So there's a level of comfort in this space that we want to name it. We want to acknowledge that. And that's what actually makes this stage very dangerous, because comfort doesn't trigger change here. This level of comfort is very distracting. It's numbing. It numbs the fighter inside of you who had dreams, who had aspirations, who could decide what she wanted and go for it. Because nothing is worse than getting to the end of your working years and realizing that you made a lot of money, but you didn't use it well. So I want to talk to you about two types of financial avoidance. I've talked about the first one, which is super obvious. You don't look at your numbers, you avoid your bank account, you feel anxious about money because you don't like what you're looking at, right? And so you ignore it. This comes from fear, this comes from anxiety. Most people know this. And again, every time we talk about financial avoidance, that's where people's mind go. But there's another kind of avoidance that is very subtle, very sneaky, insidious. And it's far more socially acceptable because on the outside you look good. Everything is looking great. You fit in with the group. You fit in with the Joneses. You can now start making expensive purchases. It's incredible. But this is honestly very dangerous. And I call this sophisticated avoidance. I was talking about this earlier this morning at a networking event. And I want you to pay attention to this because this is what I see in high earning women all of the time. So I wanted to get clear. Traditional avoidance is what comes from fear, what I talked about earlier. You don't check out your balance. You don't want to look at your debt. You're afraid of what you're going to look at. So you avoid your money. That's easy to identify. But sophisticated avoidance, it's not related to fear. And because it isn't related to fear, you don't look at it as a threat to your ecosystem because it looks like success. I mean, really, right? Because you make good money, you can afford your life, you're not in a crisis. There's no like fire alarm running, screaming, and yelling at you to get out. So you assume you're fine. You don't feel any type of urgency, no pressure. So you don't need to look deeper. And so because you're not scared, you feel like everything's good. So you're not looking at your numbers here, not because you're afraid, but because you don't think you need to look at your numbers. You're doing the same. You're avoiding your money. You're not looking at your intentions. You're not looking at your desires. You're not looking at the money. And that's not out of fear. That's out of, I'm good. What do I need to look at this for? It's all taken care of anyway. I'm never in the red ever, and I don't carry that with me. So here's how it shows up. You spend freely because you can. You don't track closely because nothing is wrong. What's the point, right? And you don't question your decisions because your income supports all of them. And when there's like a tiny little nudge inside of you that it's like, oh, we should probably look into this more closely, you kind of override it because you're like, I don't know. What are you talking about? I'm good. To yourself, oh, I make good money. I'm doing better than most. There's nothing I need to worry about. And just like that, you move on. That is sophisticated avoidance. Now, I want to take you deeper because this is not random. This is not just happening here and there. At some point in your life, maybe money felt limited. Okay. So you thought you needed to look at every single purchase. You felt restricted with money. You were one of those people that was struggling. And so you told yourself that one day you're not going to have to worry about this, that one day it'll be over. And then you did get to the day. You got to the one day when it was over. Your income increased. Your capacity for spending increased as well. And then you felt the relief that you had been longing for all this time. But that relief turned into a pattern that says, I deserve this. I've worked hard for this. I never want to feel broke again. So you started to spend more freely, not recklessly, but freely, just freely. So at this level, let's talk about a biggest misconception that I see a lot, that budgeting is not necessary. And for me, budgeting is money planning. So for most high earning women, they think budgeting is not necessary. So they're rejected immediately because they think it's restrictive, it's detailed, it's tedious. And since money's coming in and it's paying all the lifestyle, what's the point? It feels like it's something that you needed when you needed to you used when you needed to get by. Remember when the days were tough and you were making yourself promises of what you wanted to accomplish? You were telling yourself one day you won't have to struggle so much. That's what budgeting was for. But now you don't think it's necessary. But here's the truth. You don't reject budgeting because you don't need it. You reject it because you misunderstand its purpose. And this is exactly where you get stuck. Because it's not that you don't know how to manage money. It's that no one actually taught you the skills to make it work. You know how to create money, but most women are not intentional about that skill. They kind of just picked it up along the way because they have strong resiliency. And then the skill of spending and having and multiplying your money are skills that you haven't tapped into. Again, it's only because you have not been taught how to understand your emotional patterns with money, what triggers your spending, what drives your decision, how to create a decision-making framework, how to build a simple structure with money that supports your life and not restrict it, and how to follow through on your personal decisions without feeling burnt out or even falling back into old habits. And if you haven't learned any of these skills on purpose, you have moved away from money is hard and difficult to I have a lot of it, I deserve it, I see what I want, I can now spend it. And that relief is basking you in the comfort of there's nothing wrong, there's no alarm going off. This is exactly what I talk about and study in my masterclass, How to Spend Your Money Guilt-Free. This class, I have it on Thursday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you want to learn more, look in the show notes, the link in the show notes. It's greenwealthlegacy.com/confidence to find out more about this class. Because at this level, budgeting is not about restriction, which, number one, it was never about restriction. Even the women that I work with that you would consider, or most people would consider, oh, maybe they're not making that much money. Budgeting is essential for wealth building. It is one of the core pillars you need to establish as a foundation. The women that I work with that are making multiple six figures, budgeting is essential for wealth building. Budgeting, money planning is a skill that's essential. Because since budgeting was never, or money planning was never about restriction, it's about structure. You know, when you're building a home, you need to set up the structure first, the foundation. It's about intentional allocation. It's about directing your money towards the life you want. And here's the part about sophisticated avoidance that you've missed. While you're living in this beautiful world of I make money and I can spend it, which is incredible, you're not tapping into what do I want? I get to want something that is within me, and I get to tap into me to find that out. I don't decide what I want because I watch the commercial and they advertise the latest thing and now that's what I want. I don't want what I want because my mother told me that's what I want, or my husband said that's what we should want, or my job, or my surroundings, or my gender. Oh, this is what women in your age bracket, in your income bracket, in your society class should want. No. What do I want? That is a really powerful question to ask yourself. And you haven't spent time there because the noise, it's very loud out there. Oh, it's very loud. And our brain is very sensitive to that noise. Our brain doesn't like the noise. So what does it do? It goes back to autopilot. It hides. And that's the reason why that noise gets louder and louder and louder. So that inner voice inside of you, it's there, it's whispering, and you can tap into it at any given moment. You don't need to go to a retreat to find your voice. No, no, no. You can just tap into it and be like, what do you want? Right? If no one was involved and you could just decide what you wanted and no one would hurt you or judge you or kick you out of the group, or you wouldn't get fired, you wouldn't get mistreated, what would you want? If you knew you could have it. Because that's another reason why you're afraid to ask yourself, because you don't think you could actually create it. But if you created this level of income, my friend, you've only started touching the fringes of your potential. What do you want? Here's the cost of sophisticated avoidance. Nothing breaks immediately. Remember, there's no fire going off. There's no crisis. But over time, you start to realize you don't have a clear plan. You don't know what you're building toward. You're not confident in your long-term decisions. And then eventually one day you look up and think, I've made a lot of money. So how come I don't feel secure? And that's when the truth comes out. That's when the real problem surfaces. Not because something went wrong, but because nothing was clearly ever directed or defined. There was never a real structure to support your expansion. And this is where most people miss it. Because there's a difference between making money and knowing how to have money. So remember we talked about this problem as a surface, like it's not on the surface. You don't see it. There's no red alarm going off. There's no signal, nothing. It looks good. The water is calm. But that's the part where I want to call you into intentionality and not just accept the calm waters as is. Is to dig in. Look inside. And you may find that how you're doing it right now is incredible and you love it and you don't belong to the sophisticated avoidance type. But that's how you're going to walk away from sophisticated avoidance, because you're going to look in and identify, oh no, I am actually doing what I want. So you may have been avoiding it because you didn't tap in, but like when you looked inside, you realize I already am living according to my standards. I just never noticed that. But if you're not, just recognize it and know there's a way to remedy that. Because listen, you've worked so hard to earn that money. Don't you want to like make the most of it? Like for real, let's just be real right now, okay? Because there's nothing worse than looking back and thinking, I could have done something deeper. Ooh, and the window has closed, right? Like I really want you to think about that. I think about, I remember I spent a year in Africa. And it wasn't planned. That wasn't the goal to be a full year in Africa. I was only supposed to be there for a few weeks. And then I was going to go gallivanting throughout Europe and have the best time of my entire life. Something happened. I ended up having to stay in Africa for a full year. And I remember thinking, yikes, that was not the plan. But also I remember thinking, if I'm not careful, I'm going to regret this adventure, because I'm going to get so homesick. I'm going to only be focused so much about going home that I'm not going to enjoy being here. What am I ever going to have a full year in Africa without working? I was working, but I wasn't working. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't like working. And every day I was so homesick, you guys. I really was. I was so homesick. I don't think I've ever been that homesick. I missed my humans. It was awful. I missed watching them grow up. And listen, this is deep for me. As the auntie, I take my auntie role extremely importantly, right? I remember when my twins were born. And if you haven't listened to any episode of the podcast, and this is your first one, my sisters, I have 6 nieces and nephew all together, and I call them my humans, my children. So I don't want you to catch you off guard. You're thinking, do you have kids? Because like I have a lot of pictures with my 6 kids, and everybody's always like, do you have kids? And I'm like, well, technically no, but I claim them. And so I'll say stuff like my children or my humans, and it sounds really strange, but that's me. So one of my sister is a twin, and she has twin boys. And I remember when they were born, I stayed with her for like 2 months. That's how crazy I am. The best 2 months of my life, right? And then I started going back to work. And so yeah, she took maternity leave. I also did. So I started going back to work. So it took me a week. One time, it took me a week before I saw them again. Because even when I was going back to work, I was coming back every day to look at them, just watching them. Like, it was so mesmerizing. So one time I got to a whole week and I didn't see them. So when I came back, listen, this is a little tangent, but I'll bring you back, I promise. When I came back, I saw that they were different. Babies grow so fast, and like a week, it's huge. I bawled my eyes out because I was like, I missed their growth. It was so sad. My sister recorded me. I still look at that video today and I'm like, you are so pathetic. But that's how much time can elapse. And if you're not paying attention, you miss out on so much, right? And that's the same thing that I was thinking about when I was in Africa. I was like, I don't want to go home and look back and think, oh, I should have done more. I should have had more adventures. I should have enjoyed the time more. The whole time I was sitting there crying about how homesick I was. So I did it. I went on hiking trips. I went to the beach as much as I could. I wanted to. I hung out with friends. I made incredible connections. I had so much fun. I milked the adventure, right? And so when I came home, I look back, I have no regrets. There's nothing I'm looking back and thinking, I wish I would have tapped in this experience a little bit more. And that's what I'm calling you into. A financially confident woman happens to life. Making great income is incredible. Not looking at the income you're missing this piece of your power in life, that when you look back, you're going to realize, I could have done better. I could have done differently. I could have tapped in deeper. And I don't want you to do that. So I want you to gain that consciousness, be awake in your own life. I don't want you to look back and think that you could have done better. Because, like I said, there's a difference between making money and knowing how to have money. And if you wake up and stay alive in your life, you'll notice the difference. When you're making money and you don't realize it's a skill, you think it's just happening. You're just making money. Especially if you're working for someone, you think, oh, this is the security. I work, I get paid. You don't realize, no, I am giving value, and that's the reason I'm getting paid. So you start to take your ownership into the money-making business, right? So when you don't learn how to have money, you default to using it the easiest way possible, which is spending. That's the easiest way. I mean, it's so easy to spend money, right? But I want you to learn that it's not wrong to spend money. It's just familiar. That's just naturally what we do. Our brain is always going to go to the most familiar thing. And when you spend so many years striving for more, you get so used to the feeling of wanting. And so when you finally have it, you don't necessarily know how to sit with it, how to have it. So instead you move it, you spend it, you circulate it, You keep the momentum going. And this is because you never developed the skill of holding money with intention. So I'm going to say this very clearly. You can have hundreds of thousands of dollars. It does not mean that you're financially secure, because security, when it comes to money, it's not about the numbers. It's about clarity, knowing how you created that money, having the structure to support that money that comes in, and making intentional decisions about what that money is going to do for you. Because if today you didn't have your income making machine, you wouldn't freak out, you wouldn't panic, because you know intentionally how to create more money. That's the financially confident woman. If you didn't have to work today, you also wouldn't freak out, because you would know you have a structure in place to support you. Because without the clarity, the structure, and the intentional decisions, your money is always going to feel slightly out of reach, no matter how much you make. So what if there was more to life than just spending what you make because you can? What if your money could support something deeper, something that you really have defined and you have allowed yourself to want? So what is the shift here? How do you move from unconscious to intentional, from comfortable to clear, from reactive to directed? How do you do that? You start with honesty. Yay! You start to see it for what it really is. That is just covering something you need to address. Lots of money. It's incredible, fabulous, love it. Also, let's look deeper. So we look deeper with honesty, no judgment. I teach my clients, we do not judge. Okay? We are the most accepting that there ever is. Because the minute you introduce judgment in the picture, your brain freezes. No judgment, just honesty. So you want to ask yourself, where is my money actually going? Where is it going, right? Do I like how I'm using it? What am I building with this money? Where am I going? And if you don't have clear answers, that's okay. That's your starting point, because sophisticated avoidance is dangerous, my friend. But it's only dangerous because it's not looking like the traditional avoidance. It looks like there's no problem, but that doesn't mean there isn't one. So if you recognize yourself in what I'm saying, I don't want you to ignore it. I don't want you to explain it away. I don't want you to justify it. I don't want you to judge it. I just want you to look at it. Because the goal is never just to make money. That's an incredible first step towards your financial confidence. But it's to lead the money with intention. And the moment you start thinking about that, like you've acquired a skill of creating money, the next skill is to now lead it with intention. Everything changes. So if everything I said here made you pause for a second and you looked inside and you noticed that there's some things that we can clean up, I don't want you to just move away from this episode as if it's just, oh, great information. This is the kind of work that requires you to slow down and actually pay attention to what's going on. And if you're ready to do that, fantastic, because I am hosting my masterclass, How to Spend Your Money Guilt-Free, on Thursday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The link to find out more about it is greenwealthlegacy.com/confidence. It's also in the show notes. This is the next step for your next evolution. You've built the capacity for more income. You've built the capacity for spending. We need to build bigger capacity so that you can live your life intentionally. Because in this masterclass is where you're going to learn how to understand your money, direct it with intention, and finally feel in control of it without the guilt. The kind of control that gives you peace of mind and gives you grounded confidence. I'm going to leave you with this. Looking clearly, judgment-free, with curiosity at your money is the highest level of self-care. Receiving money, getting the money coming in, flowing in, that's incredible. tapping in to verify that what you're doing with the money is exactly what you want to do with the money is incredible. And that's your next evolution. So until the next episode, I want you to go out and design your life on purpose. See you in the next episode.